Hello, dreamers, doers, and achievers. I'm Tyson, your host, and I invite you to join me on a new adventure called Sharing Success with Tyson. Each week, we dive into the most inspiring stories of individuals who have transformed their dreams into reality. From the entrepreneurs who started from nothing to the artists who see the world differently, we share the journeys that inspire and motivate. Whether you're looking to ignite a long held passion or find encouragement in your daily grind, Sharing Success with Tyson is your weekly dose of motivation. Together, let's redefine success and achieve the extraordinary. I am super excited to hop into this episode today. Today, our guest is Ben Rees. Um, Ben is a certified life coach and lifelong techie. He has some very unique life experience that he brings to his coaching and over 20 years of IT experience. Ben loves spending time with his circle of people, going for his walks, and finding random adventures with his kids and granddaughter. I have actually been a coaching client of Ben's. His life coaching is phenomenal, and I'm just really excited to kind of hop into this and, uh, yeah, yeah, just to see all of his experiences that he's going to share with us and to talk about how he got from where he has been to the successful journey that he has been on today. Hello, guys, and welcome to the Sharing Success podcast. We're going to be able to hear from him, and honestly, I think it's going to be great. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Thank you for the support thus far. It has been a great ride, and I've had a lot of people say that this podcast has inspired them, and that makes me very happy. That's exactly what I set out to do on this podcast. So I'm really humbled and I'm really honored. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoy this episode. Cool. We are recording. We're here.
Beautiful. Awesome.
Awesome. Okay. So I already introduced you in the clip before, so we're just gonna hop
Okay.
on in, Ben. I've got lots of questions for you. Is that okay?
Yeah, ask away.
Okay. So I want you to start by telling listeners your background and the
Okay.
journey that's led you to where you are right now.
Okay. All right. As far as my background, how far do you want me to go? I
However far, whatever you
however
think is
far I want to go.
crucial to your journey.
So I think my journey it started probably about 12 years ago, maybe 13 years ago. And I would say my journey started when I was in the middle of like my shit, right? Like in the middle of
Hmm.
also, is it okay if we swear?
Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
okay. Um, was when I was probably at my worst, I would say. So I was married, I wasn't happy, I was going to church, I was doing all these things for everybody else,
Hmm.
but not necessarily for myself. And then I had a big life changing moment happen to me where a dear friend that I used to work with, uh, we were out riding motorcycles, like dirt bikes. He had a heart attack. And like a month later, he ended up passing away. And I took that experience and went the opposite direction of what you should do. Um, kind of went into a spending spree where this will be super vulnerable, but it's very important to my story. So
Yeah.
uh, I was embezzling money from an old employer, and when my friend passed away, I in that moment felt like I didn't really have anybody to talk to about it.
Yeah.
Um, and so what I ended up doing was just going and spending money online. So I would move money, I would spend it, and I just like did that, and it along with some other things, but it pretty much I did that heavy for about 2 years, and then June of 2014, uh, I was using PayPal to do my stuff, and in June of 2014, PayPal pretty much called me and said, okay, like we've been tracking you. It's all digital, right? So they're like, we can do it either the easy way or the hard way. You go turn yourself in, or we'll just have the cops roll up in like 10 minutes. And so I was like, okay, well, I guess the next day I'm doing it. So the next day I went in
Mhm.
and told my employer. That's kind of when all my secrets and lies and all this stuff that I've been doing to try to cover up all this crap pretty much just got stripped away. All of it, all at once, just got stripped. And I would say that was probably like my low point from there. That was like my rock bottom. Also feels like I've gone to rock bottom a couple times after that. But I think once you've hit rock bottom once, you you kind of know where that is, and you also
Yep.
know the steps to get out of it, right? So if you hit that again, I don't think it's as drastic as that very first time that you've done it. Um, so I remember like having to all of a sudden be 100% honest, not with just everybody around me, but also with myself, right? And so started going to therapy, started doing the work, um, and working on all of that stuff. I got divorced, went through all of that at the same time. Had to get a new job, of course, because the job fired me because they're not going to want to keep somebody that embezzles around. So got a new job, started kind of like building my way up, and and then obviously things started, more challenges would happen. My boss that hired me after that found out what happened, and so then I had to once again be honest about it, right, and be
Mhm.
upfront, and he was okay with it because I was honest and said, okay, well, I'll give you a chance, and that's all I really wanted was a chance.
Yep.
And then in 20 the end of 2017, the state finally decided to charge me on on the embezzlement case, and so in April of 18, I got sentenced. I went in there. My lawyer was like, "Oh, it's your first time offense. They're probably not going to do that. Yeah, I might give you house arrest." So I got up in front of the judge, and the judge was pretty much like, "Well, because of the amount and the time you did it, I can't do that." Uh, so he sentenced me a year in jail,
Mhm.
and uh, like I still remember that, like just looking at him, like I can't believe this is happening. And once again, had to be honest because I really hadn't told my kids this situation. And all of a sudden, I had 5 days to pack up my house, close up, pretty much shut down my life, tell
Mhm.
my kids that this was happening, and then go from there, right? So then so did that, told the kids, went to jail for 5.5 months, got out, had to start over again, and have kind of just been doing that since.
Mhm.
Let's see, probably 20, I guess it was the end of 19, the beginning of COVID. So 20 is when a buddy that I was staying with, we decided to get our life coaching certifications because we just love like uh, personal development and growth and everything. And so we're like, hey, let's just get our life coaching certification. So we got those in 20. And I've kind of been doing a little bit here and there. Like, I would love to say that my full time job is a life coach. Like, that is my ultimate dream. But right now, I'm an IT guy. So,
Yeah.
IT guy, the IT portion of it pays the bills and like helps me live my life. And then my life coaching is my passion that I just, anybody that I come across and want to talk about it, I'll talk
Yeah.
about it. So to me, the life coaching is more, at least right now, is more of, I guess, a way of me giving back to people and like serving others as I figure out the rest of it. So
Yeah. I love that. And that's what I was gonna say, that's the whole goal, right? Is we start somewhere and you can do whatever you want on the side, and the goal is to get there
mm-hmm,
eventually doing it full
mm-hmm,
time. But
mm-hmm,
I think it's important to just kind of recognize that space in between because it's
mm-hmm,
super like gritty and it's hard and a lot of the times it gets us discouraged. I just had this talk the other day with someone. But if we honor that space and we recognize, no, this means that I'm actually on track to getting where I want to be, the fact that I'm willing
mm-hmm,
to try and do this part time and put this effort forward, Um, I think it's something that we can look back and say, "Oh yeah, I remember I was
Mhm.
hustling on the side. I was doing it on the side,
Mhm.
working a full-time job." But because of that, you're able to support yourself while you're doing this. I think that's great.
Right. Right. Yeah, 100%.
That's
Totally
so
agree.
cool. Oh, I think I might have lost you for a second.
Oh,
Okay.
can
Can
you
you
hear
hear
me
me
now?
now?
I can hear.
Okay. Um, I think that's really cool. So you did say that you were sentenced to a year, but you got out at
Mhm.
5.5 months. Was that because of COVID
Correct.
or okay.
No, it wasn't because of COVID. So I got out September of 18, and pretty much what happened is that I requested a review for the
Mhm,
judge. So if if you go in and you're good or everything, right, like you can request to have a hearing with the judge, and then the judge can decide if he wants to let you out or if he's going to make you stay. And so I went and like talked to him, and it it helped because my previous employer had said whatever happens, like you'll always have a place here. And so I was like, well, if you let me out, I'll have a job and I can start paying
mhm.
back what I owe and all this other stuff. And so he was reluctant, but he let me out. I still had to be on like a good old ankle monitor for three or 4 months, but at
Mhm.
least I could get out and work and do all of that and not just be in
Yeah.
jail. So,
Yeah, that's awesome.
mhm.
That's really cool. Did that time when you got out and you were on the ankle monitor, kind of that in between, are you grateful that you asked for that because it gave you some perspective before you were, like, thrust back into everything again?
um, a little bit. So, because I've gone back and forth about it. Because when I initially got sentenced, the monthly payment was like $250. I don't think anybody paid attention to it.
Mhm,
And when I requested getting out, one of the stipulations is that they were going to increase that payment. So the increasement was like $500, which
mhm.
as I'm making that decision, I'm like, okay, well, I could probably still make that payment. Like that's not a big deal. Like, and a lot of this is assuming what I was assuming that when I would get back to my other job, it would be exactly where I was when I left, right? And so
Yeah.
like I have all these assumptions, and I'm trying to make these decisions based on those assumptions. So I'm like, yeah, sure, like we can do this. I'll figure it out. And then I get off the ankle monitor, and it was pretty much kind of back to normal. Like I'd have a couple hours a week that I could go do errands or go grocery shopping or whatever, and then pretty much I just have to stay home. So I blame my Fortnite addiction with me having to stay home so long. Um, but uh, so they let me out, and I go talk to my employer. Well, as when I was in jail, the owner had sold it to a private equity firm. So now all of a sudden, the owner's not there; somebody else owns it.
Mhm,
And I had no idea what was going to happen, right? Like I had to go talk to them, and like, luckily, a couple things benefited for me was I still had all my friends and all the people that knew me before still work there, so like they vouched for me.
mhm.
And once again, just like I did with the judge, I just give me a chance. That's all I want. Like give me a chance. Well, the judge and the owner previously, but like give me a chance to show you that this is not me, right? Like
Yeah.
this is not who I am. And so he did. The tough thing was is that he'd cut my salary in half. So all of a sudden my salary is half of what it was. And so then obviously that $500 was more than what I was thinking.
Mhm,
So I guess in those moments, like I kind of wondered if I would have stayed, like should I have stayed and kept the $200 and just like wrote it out. But also I realized that it was more about everything else than that money, right? Because that's 5 or 6 more months that my kids don't see me, and that's,
mhm.
5 or 6 more months that I'm not around my friends or around, my family, and that's 5 or 6 months that lets that company decide if they wanna keep me, right? I could have waited and then gone to them when I got out, and they could have easily changed their mind and said, "No, it's okay. We're not going to give you a chance." And then I would have been
Mhm.
like, "Okay, what do I do?" So,
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Um, well, first of all, thank you for being vulnerable about that. I think that's
Oh yeah.
important. I think you're
Hmm.
right. I think, just because to see where you are today and to see that you're still finding the time to, um, do what you love and that you have goals and that
Hmm.
you're in a really good spot, I think it's hopefully inspiring to listeners who have been in similar situations. I know especially in society today, there's a stigma that comes with people who, um, have either had to, I don't know, go to jail, go to prison, pay for their crimes, and when they
Hmm.
get back out into society, that's attached to them, and
Hmm.
for whatever reason, there's not a lot of grace given out in society,
Hmm.
and I
Hmm.
think for some people, it takes a lot for people to learn, a lesson, but for the most part, at least from what I've seen, is when people commit and they make the effort to say, "Hey, I did the work, I did the time, I'm ready to just kind of move forward." Um,
Hmm.
and when grace is extended to them and they're like allowed to change and allowed to grow,
Hmm.
they go in a completely different direction, you know?
Hmm.
And so
Hmm.
I think for a lot of people listening, your story is definitely one that's like super hopeful.
Yeah, yeah, I appreciate that. Um, Being in jail, like it, we can get super political, but the system is not, and this is my belief in seeing people that were there, but like I believe that the system is not built to help rehabilitate people or help people be like work through whatever their issues are that put them
Mhm,
there to get them to break that cycle, right? Like I had people there that they were there when I was there. They had served their time, they had gotten out, and they had come back before I'd even left, right? So like, and a lot of that is they get out, they don't have the opportunities, they go back to their same group of people, and that group of people isn't a good influence on them, so they just go back to their habits, and a lot of that is being aware of what those habits are, what those tendencies are, and then being willing and or able to change those habits so you go a different path, right?
mhm.
For me, I was very lucky. I was on that path before I even went, and I still needed to go. Like that was part of the ultimate path that I had to go through. Um, but but I was fortunate enough that somebody gave me a chance that kind of boosted me on my path, right? Like it gave me a little bit of, oh yeah, here you go. So instead of working at McDonald's, like here's at least a livable wage that you can, support your family and figure out what you need to do as you continue to rebuild your life. So
Yeah.
I the sad thing is a lot of people don't have that.
Mhm. No, I
So,
completely agree. I completely agree. And at least I've known, many people in my life, many people that are like super dear to me um that have had to spend time in jail and prison. And I find that a common um I think for a lot of people, it's the stability that they don't get outside of jail and
mhm,
outside of prison. Um,
mhm,
they get out, and like you said, it's not set up to rehabilitate them. They're given no
mhm,
resources. A lot of people
mhm,
aren't told, hey, if you love the stability, the schedule that you get while you are behind bars, you can
mhm,
have that even more so, when you're out, when you're on the outside.
mhm,
It just takes, some commitment, and if somebody were to give them, like you said, the resources, like a decent job and a fighting
mhm,
chance and some grace, somebody who really believes in them,
mhm,
um, some direction, it would be, I guarantee it would be so different because so many
mhm,
people, they get used to waking up at a certain time, they get used to their routine, and then it's like you get out and it's like, "Okay, what do I do?" Except
mhm.
for go back to what I was used to.
Right,
Um,
right, because that's what's
so
familiar,
Mhm. Yeah,
right? So they're
absolutely.
comfortable with it. They're
Mhm.
comfortable in whatever that chaos is, and it's interesting because, and I'd have these conversations with guys in jail because where I was, like I was like in a two-man cell when I started, but by the time I went on like this work release program, and so I had like a group of guys like in a dorm type situation. So there was like 16 of us in this giant room with a bunch of bunk beds, but like it kind of helped because then you could kind of build some relationships with these people.
Mhm.
Now, knowing those relationships probably going to end when you leave because you
Yeah.
don't necessarily want those around, but being able to at least have some connection per se in jail. But so many guys, right? Like they'd have drug addictions or dependencies on things. They'd go into jail and they'd get clean and they'd be clean for months, right?
Yep.
And then they would go out and they would be like, "I'm so worried." I'm like, you guys are doing it, but the difference is they had somebody dictating and
Yep.
organizing and telling them everything they needed to do every single second of the day. Where as soon as they get out, they don't have that structure and they personally probably don't have that structure within them or used to having routine or whatever, and so it all just goes away and then all of it just goes away.
Mhm.
But so many times I'm like, you guys are doing it, you just have
Yeah.
to figure out how
Yeah.
to do it once you get out. So
Mhm. There's they have to. They have no choice but to get clean
mhm,
and to follow this strict schedule
mhm,
and do the things that they're supposed to. But I feel like if on the outside there was somebody, like you to point out
mm,
in their life,
yeah,
you actually did this, you're capable of this, I believe in you, you have this support
mhm,
system. Let's move
mhm,
forward. It would be a lot easier for everybody.
mhm,
So,
mhm,
thank you for sharing your thoughts on
definitely.
that. I think that's
Yeah, you
super
bet.
it's good to get other perspectives sometimes, and for a lot of people
Mhm,
just to see that there's no reason that that has to hold you back because there's so many
right.
people that are willing to believe in you and give you that grace.
Mhm, agreed.
So, okay, so let's talk about what success means to you personally, and tell me if that has evolved over time.
It's a great question. It definitely has evolved. So I would say earlier in my life, I felt success was based more on materialistic things, right? Like how much money I was making, or the house I lived in, or right, like the car I
Mhm.
drove. And a lot of that came from how I was raised and how I was brought up and and what I was around. And I think that's even some of the reason why I got in trouble in the first place. It all started from, oh, I'm not making enough, so I need to figure out a way to do this, whatever, right?
Mhm.
So, um, but I think as I've gone through all of this and went through everything, I've realized that success to me is now more of, at least personally, like, how can I be a better version of myself tomorrow than I was today? And am I
Yeah.
a better version of myself today than I was yesterday? Right. And it's not perfect. And there are days that I stumble and it's not, I think anybody that has gone through like a healing journey or a growth journey has realized that it is not a linear path and it is
No.
not point A to point B. Like it can be all over the place.
Mhm.
and and I think the biggest thing for us as humans is when you're going through that journey is giving ourselves grace, right? So like, okay, I don't get up and go for my walk in the morning. I don't get up and meditate. It's okay that I didn't do that today. And it doesn't mean that I'm a failure or that I'm a horrible person or that I'm going to beat myself up over it. I'm just going to allow it that it is what it is and that I'll just be better the next day, right? And then you just keep
Mhm.
continuing to do that day after day and whatever your version of success is, you doing the best you can do in that moment in that journey is to me what success is, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I love that. So, just to kind of backtrack a little bit, because I think this
yeah.
is important for people, especially like me. I am the type of person, and I'm still working on it, where I am a perfectionist. I love routine. I love things to be just as they're supposed to be. And I often
Mhm.
find that if like you said, if I miss my workout one morning or if I don't do completely perfect on, something in work or something like that,
Mhm. Mhm.
because it's technically not, like, perfect anymore, I just
Mhm.
throw in the towel altogether, and I'm like, "Well, I
Mhm.
don't I don't wanna try now." Just because that
Mhm.
perfection, what we
Mhm.
define as perfection, we see it as unattainable now. So
Right.
I'm asking you, as a life coach and as somebody who has struggled with this before as well, how did you get yourself out of that mindset to give you the grace where you're like, I'm just going to proceed and I'll try again tomorrow?
That's a great question. First off, I'm not perfect at it. I still get to the point where my perfectionism kicks in, right?
Hmm.
I think a lot of that comes from how I was raised,
Yeah.
specifically religiously, right? Like I think it's so, I mean, right? Like you're compared to a perfect human, so it's hard
Yeah.
to give yourself grace sometimes. So I think for me, it just hold on, let's see. I'm just going to start where I was. Okay, so did you have the? Okay, for me, man, I'm all over the place.
No,
For
you're good.
me, so starting right, like starting something, and I think we as humans want to start something new and be perfect at it
Hmm.
within days, right? Like we just that's how we want it, and so you know, even like with my girlfriend's kiddos, um, especially her daughter. Like if she tries something and she can't do it immediately, she gets so frustrated and upset because she's not doing it. And I have to remind her, it anybody that you've seen done anything great or good or at a high level, it has taken them years to get to that point, right? And
Yep.
we all start something new at point zero and we just work our way to that as we move along, right? And
Hmm.
so I think that's one thing that people can realize when they're trying to like get over perfectionism, that you're not going to be perfect immediately and like you have to start it. And I my biggest thing is I do it when I start jobs. Like I'll start a job and I'm like, I can't do this job, I'm horrible.
Yeah.
And then I'm also like, I've been doing this same job for 20 years. Like, what do you mean you're horrible? Like, you have it. Like, you just have to give yourself grace and like not beat yourself up. Like, no negative
Hmm.
self-talk. And so I think realizing that, I think being um, one thing is we the tough thing is, say, you're going to go to bed and the next morning you're like, okay, I'm going to get up and I'm going to go on a walk. Well, if you sleep in and you don't go on that walk, you immediately feel like you've let yourself down or you're defeated because you're
Hmm.
like, well, I made this promise to myself and I let myself down. You did to a point, but also it is okay that you did that, right? Like,
Hmm.
and some of it is like reframing your perspective of, and I think this is with anything, right? But like, instead of failing at this one thing, I chose, or my body decided, or my mind decided that it needed to do X or Y instead
Yeah.
of Z, right? So, okay, I didn't get up and go for a walk, but it was probably because I needed that 30 minutes of rest. And it's okay that I slept instead of going on that walk, right? And so
Yeah.
help and you don't want to like start justifying everything, but I
Hmm.
also feel like us as humans, we need to be kinder to ourselves because we are our biggest critics. We're going to beat ourselves up the most. And so if we're kind to ourselves, I think it helps us be kinder to others and it helps other people be kinder to us, right? Because right, it
Hmm.
just flows. So,
Yeah. I love that. And kind of along those lines, because you're talking about reframing your mindset. I know that just because we talked before about it, and because
mhm,
you post on your stories on Instagram, I know that you are like meditation pro. You do
mm,
meditation a lot,
mhm,
and you utilize that.
mhm, mhm,
Can
100%.
you speak to that, and can you talk, maybe give some insight for people who are wanting to do that but don't think they're capable of
Yeah,
doing that?
yeah, for sure. First, it's the perfectionism thing, right? First off, don't try to go meditate for 30 minutes, right? Like
Mhm.
it immediately, your brain's going to go in 30 seconds and your brain's going to go to whatever you need to do in the afternoon, which is okay, but you're going to feel like you're not doing what you're supposed to or you're not doing it right. So for me, for my meditation, meditation is very, there's a couple things. It's my prayer, right? So, I mean, for the religious people, like I pray, but I don't necessarily pray like get on my hands and knees and pray that way,
Mhm.
right? Like my prayers are usually like as I go throughout the day and I acknowledge things that life or the universe or God has given me, right? Like those are my prayers.
Mhm.
But in the morning, I do my meditations where I, I pick a meditation. Usually I do guided ones because it just helps, kind of helps my brain. Um, and I just go for 5 minutes or 8 minutes or 15 minutes, depending on the meditation. And I just get quiet because when we get quiet, that's when our intuition will speak to us, things will come up, right? But as humans, we are so busy being distracted with social media or work or family life or whatever, like we're not able to listen to those things because we have too many things around us. And so for meditating, that's kind of my quiet time. And I definitely like I'm actually on a pretty good streak. I think I'm on like 139 straight days of meditating because I
Wow.
use, yeah, my app that I use tracks it, right? So like,
Mhm.
but I it is so integral in my routine that even if I miss the morning and I don't do it till later on in the day, I feel it. Like I
Yeah.
notice that I haven't. And so for me, like that's how I kind of reset my mind and bring up more awareness and be more mindful for the day. And then it just helps me have a better day.
Yeah.
But for people that are starting, a couple things I suggest using, like an app. I use Insight Timer. That's my app that I use.
Mhm.
Um, and start slow. So start a minute. You don't have to do very long. Start a minute, and realize that there's two key things to, at least for me, for meditation. One is you focus on your breathing. That's all you have to focus on. So you focus on breathing in and breathing out, or being mindful of like how your body is in the chair, or if you're laying down or whatever. Um, and then the second thing is you're going to have thoughts come in your brain, and it is okay that thoughts come in because
Mhm.
your brain wants you to think of things. It's like, hey, you're not doing anything. You've got all this stuff you need to worry about.
Yeah.
So the key to it is it's very much like a stream, right? Like you have a stream, you throw a stick or a leaf or whatever, and you just let it flow by. But it doesn't
Mm.
stay in front of you. It just flows by, right? And so as you're
Yeah.
meditating, I might have a random thought, oh, I need to feed the dog. I, okay, I acknowledge that I thought it and then I just let it go. I
Yeah.
don't think about, okay, well, how many cups of food do I need to feed? Do I have dog food? Oh, he probably needs water. He probably needs to get let out, right? Because once you start one thought, it's just going to spiral into as many thoughts and you'll go down that rabbit hole so fast. And then all of a sudden your timer goes off and you're like, oh, I've just been thinking about dog food for the last 5 minutes. So being able to like release it and let it go and move on helps with that, definitely.
I like that because I think that's something that's held me up, and I think
Hmm.
probably a lot of people can relate that too. It's
Hmm.
like your mind keeps going and you get frustrated, and it's almost like you play into the thoughts that are happening
Hmm.
instead of just like observing them, recognizing them, and just letting them pass by. I think that's
Hmm.
yeah, that's important. I'm gonna give that a go now.
Yeah, yeah. And if you have a meditation session where 5 minutes you've just thought about everything you need to do for the day, that's okay, right?
Yeah.
And giving yourself grace that, okay, I wasn't perfect. I I did get stuck down this rabbit hole, but it's okay
Mhm.
because I'll be better tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe sometimes for me, I'll get a thought that pops up in my head when I'm meditating, but it's the thought that I need to be working on, or it's the item that I need clarifying in. And so it's okay if I think about it, right? Because then I'm working through whatever that is. But it's
Yeah.
it's being aware of, oh, this is something I need to work on compared to, oh no, this is just something I'm worried or anxious or right. It's trying to just take too much of my brain power and it doesn't give very much in return.
Mhm. Yeah.
So,
Definitely. I like that. Um, let's talk about your life coaching because I mentioned in
okay.
the intro that I've worked with you before and I really like
Hmm.
your approach to it. So I'm curious, has your past experiences like how have they affected the way that you approach your coaching and the way that you work with your clients?
It's a great question. I think a couple things. I think for me, um, I I definitely try to live how I coach people, right?
Mhm.
So, and I'm not going to be perfect, and I'm going to make mistakes, and but I also feel like it's I don't want to have somebody be working on something or me giving them advice if I can't at least be trying to live that principle, right? Like I
Yeah.
don't want to be hypocritical in that aspect. And so for me, I think, I mean, I definitely have certain experiences in my life that not very many people do, but it also gives me different perspective, and I think it gives me more compassion for those people that I'm working with, right?
Mhm.
Because a lot of the times I can't say with everything, but a lot of the times I can tell people, I can be empathetic in their situation and I can say, yeah, I at least know how some of that feels. Like I may not know exactly your situation or how you feel, but I can pull pieces of that and have that empathy. So I think it's a mix of being empathetic to that person and then also holding them accountable and also finding solutions or things that will help them and that things that will help them be successful, right? I
Yeah.
can't give you or somebody else like an exercise or solution if it doesn't resonate with you. If you're like, yeah,
Yeah.
that's stupid, I'm going to be like, okay, well then let's move on and do something else. Because if I
Mhm.
give that to you, you're not going to want to do it because it doesn't resonate, it doesn't feel important, and so it's just going to be a waste. So I think being empathetic, finding solutions that help them, that resonate to them, I think is key to how, you know, they can be successful in their journey and their healing, you know,
Yeah.
and realizing it's for me being a life coach is it's kind of tough because you know just enough to be dangerous sometimes, right? Like you're not a therapist, nor do I ever say that I'm a therapist, but I've done so much work and I've done so much on me like I can see it in other people. And I mean, my girlfriend rolls her eyes sometimes at me because I can see somebody or meet somebody and I'm like, oh, this person is this way, right? Like I'm just
Yeah.
really good at reading people. And she's like, no way. Or she's like, are you sure? And then all of a sudden she'll be like, yeah, you're right. So, so I think, but that also helps me in my coaching because then I don't know, I can pick up on who they are as a person quicker, which helps me, give them the advice and help them,
Yeah.
like, give them the tools to be able to help them be a better version of
Mhm.
themselves. So,
Yeah. I like that. And so you mentioned, just knowing enough to be dangerous, but let's dive into that because I feel like there's a lot of misconception or blurred lines around what a
mhm,
life coach does because it's such a holistic term, right? Life. It
mhm,
encompasses
mhm,
everything for
everything.
everyone. So
Mhm,
let's talk about what specifically you are helping people with and the type of
okay.
clients
Yeah,
that come to you.
yeah. So, you're right, like, life coach is a very broad term, and it could be
Mhm.
I don't know, sometimes I feel like everybody is a life coach. Um, which in essence, like, they could be, right? Like, everybody
Yeah.
has their own life experience that they can help because that's literally what coaching is I have experience and I'm going to help you through your experience because I've already been through it. It's
Yeah.
what basketball coaches are, football coaches are. They've played basketball so they can now coach it. So
Mhm.
so it makes sense. um, but for me, a lot of my coaching is a lot of it is like handling anxiety, handling like your thoughts and how your thoughts become things and then things become feelings and kind of that process of like, we create our own world depending on what we focus on, right?
Okay.
And so a lot of that is just that, but then that can also tie to, okay, how do I manage my day and how do I do time management and how do I,
Mhm.
right? So for me, I don't I don't necessarily have like an exact niche because that's one thing that most life coaches will be like, I specify in, like women that have been abused because that's their experience, right? So
Mhm.
for me, I mean, I could go, okay, well, I'm going to help, people that get out of jail kind of rehabilitate themselves. For me, I kind of just, I don't know, I want to help everybody. And so
Yeah.
it's more just, okay, well, how do you, I guess it's more how do you go along your healing journey and how can I help you with that, right?
Yes.
And a good aspect for me, because somebody asked me once before, like, what's the difference between a therapist and a life coach? And I'm like, that's a great question. But to me, like therapy works a lot on past experiences, right? So
Yeah.
so you're working on things that have happened to you
Mhm.
or trauma or whatever and working through that. And then the life coach is like, okay, well, you're here. How do we get you to point A and then to point B and then moving you forward? So life coaching is about moving forward and creating that future where, to me at least, like therapy is working on that past and getting you to the present. And I think life coaching in general too helps you with the present, right? For
Yeah.
me, it's my three B's, right? Be patient, be positive, be present. And like those three things help you get to where you need to go going forward, but you have to have those things, especially being present, to be able to, I guess, handle and acknowledge and attack what's going on in front of you right now. If you're not present, you're going to miss all sorts of stuff, or you're worried about things that you can't control or you can't change, and then that just causes a whole other mess of issues,
Mhm.
struggles, problems. So
Yeah. Yeah. So, would it be fair to say that I mean, I think everybody should have a life coach, but would it be fair to
yeah.
say that people who want to be held accountable to, just moving in the direction where they want their life to move into and, they need help maybe defining some of those steps and how
hmm
to get there, are those the
hmm
type of people that should seek out a life coach?
yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. So
Okay.
because a lot of the time us as humans, we're not, it's not everybody. There are people that are like self-starters and they can hold themselves accountable, but I think the majority of the people in life need somebody to help them be held accountable, right? Or
Mhm.
you know, there's a lot of people pleasers out here. So, that's a whole nother thing to work on. But that helps us. I'm a people person or a people pleaser. I'm both. But
Mhm.
like helps me, like, okay, if somebody asks me to do it, or if I know I have to be held accountable with somebody, I am going to do it because I don't, it comes from not wanting to let that other person down, which is isn't the most ideal way to do it or the reason to do it, but it helps me get things done, right?
Yeah.
So um, it definitely will help people move along and get to their goals if they have somebody holding them accountable, for sure.
Okay. Awesome. I like that. Let's talk about your 3 Bs because I know working from you and just working with you and just kind of knowing you that that's an integral
hmm
part of you and your practice. So can you explain that
hmm
a little bit to listeners?
Yeah, for sure. So it's kind of my mantra for sure, and it's kind of like worn off to the people that have been around me, my circle. It started probably 13 years ago, where my daughter was she was a senior in high school. She started suffering from, she just would randomly just pass out all the time.
Mm.
And as we went through that process of going through testing and MRIs and sleep studies to try to figure out what was causing it, we came up with be patient, be positive. So I have that tattooed on my left arm.
Mhm.
So that was kind of our like family motto as we were trying to get
Yeah.
through that trial. And then and I kind of just not necessarily preached it, but that's kind of what I lived by in my healing journey. And then when I went to jail, uh, the be present showed up because
Mhm.
I realized you can have those other things, but if you're present, it helps you attain being positive and being patient because you can focus on what's happening in front of you and not worried about the past or the
Mhm.
future. And um, so that's kind of where those 3 came into play, and then it's just been trying to live those,
Mhm.
kind of as my daily mantra. So it's funny because of course, I'm human, so, like, I'll get impatient or I might be negative, and one of my friends or one of my kids will be like, "Hey, remember you got that tattooed on your arm?" And I'm like, "Son of a yeah, you're right." Right? So,
Dang it.
um, yeah, but I feel definitely though those 3 Bs will help you, I guess, be in a better mindset as you go throughout this life.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. I love that. Is that something that you work on with your clients as well?
I do. So a lot of the times that's kind of what I base that on,
Mhm.
is okay, where do the 3 Bs fit with what you're trying to do or where you're trying to get to in life?
Yeah,
And a lot of it is like if somebody has anxiety and is anxious, like, okay, how can we incorporate the 3 Bs to help you lower your anxiety or help you not worry about these things or try to control, whatever you can't control? How can those things help you kind of create some space and some distance so it doesn't drive you crazy?
yeah. I like that. I like the idea of having distance there, to
Mhm,
separate you from it.
mhm.
Awesome. I love it. So, let's talk about the future. What
Okay.
is next for you, and what are some of your future goals and aspirations?
That's a good question. So, I want to definitely do more with my coaching stuff.
Mhm.
Um, I actually had a pretty interesting thing happen to me this week where um, I've been going through the process for the last probably like 5 or 6 months where I, man, it's probably been 8 or 9 months now, but I got off probation last year. And so they moved my restitution payment to the state. And so I've been working with the state trying to figure out what that looks like and how much I owe and everything. And they said, okay, well, if you can get the victim to dictate what they want to pay, then that is what you'll owe, and you won't have to
Mm.
owe the full amount or whatever. So I had my lawyer reach out to them, and they were pretty much like, "Don't worry about it. Ben's
Wow.
had to deal with enough already, so it's good. Like, don't worry about it." So I found
Yeah.
that out probably Wednesday that portion of my life is pretty much done. Like, I don't have to worry about that
Wow.
stuff anymore. Yeah, which is pretty awesome. I don't know if it's officially sunk in all the way. Like every once in a while, I'll
Yeah.
be like, "Oh yeah, I don't have to worry about that anymore." But like
Yeah.
but the nice thing about that is that helps me move on in my life, and so now things that I probably didn't think I could get done or do because of it,
Yep.
I don't have to worry about that anymore. And so now it's kind of okay, now that I don't have that hurdle or that burden on my shoulders, what does it look like now? And
Yep.
I'm right now, I'm like kind of in the middle of that. Like,
Yeah.
what does that look
Yeah.
like? So,
You're figuring it out.
um, yeah, options are definitely better now than they were 6 or 7 months ago. And I'm not completely out of the woods, but
Mhm.
it is a huge step to get back to, you know, I want to say normal life, but you know, I guess I guess life without certain labels is a good
Yes.
way to put it.
I love
So,
that. I love
yeah.
that. Less heavy, less things
Mhm.
to carry around.
Mhm. Definitely.
I love that. Awesome. Let's talk about there was one more question I wanted to ask you. Let me think. Hmm. I'm sure it'll come to me. Maybe it won't. Let's talk about people that so say somebody has decided oh, wait, I know what I wanted to ask you.
Okay. Okay.
Um, I wanted to ask you, what would you tell somebody who was in a similar situation to what you were in, or maybe is going through just kind of a rough time like that?
Mhm.
What advice do you have to give them?
It's a good question. Um, I'm gonna go to, I don't know, maybe not necessarily okay to get out of jail, but let's just talk about, okay, what does it look like if you do hit rock bottom, right? Like
Mhm,
I think that that is key, and rock bottom is different for everybody, right? Like rock bottom could be, you have an addiction and it's finally caught up to you, or rock bottom could be like me, right? And like getting caught and having to come like be honest about it. But I feel like, unfortunately, but also in a good way, I think everybody has to hit rock bottom for them to make changes, right?
mhm,
The adage of people don't change, I do feel that that is true, but I also feel like people can change, right? Like just because you were this way at one point in your life does not mean that you will be that way your entire life. Now, if you're not aware and you're not willing to change, you definitely will be that the rest of your life.
yeah,
But if you're willing to change and you're open to it and you're mindful of that, um, then I think that's attainable for anybody that wants to do that. Right
mhm,
now, I think people keep in mind that, okay, I want to change, but it I personally feel like we don't have that time frame of when we get to that point, right?
mm,
So I feel like we go through things and we're in this life to learn. And sometimes that means I have to go to jail for 5 months to learn what I need to learn. And I may not even know what that lesson is while I'm in there. I might learn that lesson 6 months, 2 years after I've gotten out. It finally comes to me and
mhm,
goes, okay, this is the lesson I needed to learn. So I think being being aware that there's divine timing and everything, but
yeah,
we don't dictate that timing. And that has happened so many times in my journey for the last 10 years that, and when I learn to surrender to that timing and just allow it to happen, A, that's when I was the happiest. B, that's when I was less stressed. And that is when things happen. And
mhm,
so, and one other thing is to remember that you've put this out there in the universe that I want to be better and I want to change and I want to go down this healing path. Life is going to test you. Like it will test you sorry, to your limits. And you
mhm,
may not even know what those limits are until you go through that.
yeah,
And and it will give you what you've asked for it as soon as you've passed that test.
yeah,
And I've had that, and I think that's law of attraction portion of it, right? And like just
mhm,
surrendering and everything. But even my last thing, it towards the last few months, it's been hard where, they were pulling garnishments and they were like pulling money out of my bank account. Like they were getting aggressive when we were even in talks where they shouldn't have been, but they still were. And I remember talking to people like, okay, like I guess having faith that it's eventually going to work out like it needs to work out and surrendering to it,
yeah,
but also realizing, okay, this is the test and I just have to endure this test and this
mhm,
too shall pass. And once this pass, then the reward will come. And that's what happened.
yeah,
Uh, but you're gonna be tested for sure. So when
mhm,
anybody that's listening, if they're in the middle of their healing path or their journey and it feels extra heavy and extra hard right now, is because it's coming.
yeah.
You just got to wait for it and be patient and be positive, be present, but it'll come.
Oh, I love that so much. I love it. Thank you, Ben.
Yep, you're welcome.
If people are interested, and they wanna learn more about your, life, put your socials down in the description, but what else do they need to know about you?
Probably the best place to find me is on Instagram. I had a Facebook account too, but I've kind of just focused strictly on Instagram.
Okay.
So I think you're gonna put the handles in the comments or the
Yep.
description. So
Mhm.
so message me there. I'm open, so anybody can get a hold of me. I think
Okay.
you're gonna put my email as well, but
Yep.
that's probably the best way is just come find me on Instagram and let's have a talk. So,
Okay. I love it. Thank you so much, Ben. It's been great to
yeah, you're
talk to you.
welcome. Yeah,
Um,
thanks for having
and
me. I
yeah,
appreciate the opportunity.
absolutely. Thank you for the reminder to use those 3 Bs because I needed it.
You bet. Anytime.
Awesome. Okay. Thanks, Ben. Have a good day.
All right, you too. Thank you.
Okay. Bye.
Bye bye.
Hey guys, thanks so much for tuning into this episode. I really hope you enjoyed it. I want to remind everybody to subscribe to the podcast if you haven't yet. Subscribers get access to success coaching resources and exclusive podcast episodes that only subscribers will be able to access.